We begin tonight with the dramatic defeat of Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney. The January 6th committee vice chair has lost her re-election bid to a candidate endorsed by former President Trump. Harriet Hageman beat Congresswoman Cheney by nearly 40 points. The trial attorney has repeated former President Trump's false claims about the 2020 election. Results are also in for primaries in Alaska. Senator Lisa Murkowski and former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin are moving on to the general election in their respective races. Congresswoman Cheney is now looking toward her future after her defeat. In her concession speech, she warned about the threat to democracy from former President Trump.
2 years ago, I won this primary with 73% of the vote. I could easily have done the same again. The path was clear. But it would have required that I go along with President Trump's lie about the 2020 election. It would have required that I enable his ongoing efforts to unravel our democratic system and attack the foundations of our republic. That was a path I could not and would not take.
For more on this, Robert Costa joins us now. He is CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent. Bob, Congresswoman Cheney was asked about a potential 2024 presidential run on the Today Show this morning. Let's take a listen.
Are you thinking about running for president?
That's a decision that I'm going to make in the coming months, Savannah. I'm not going to make any announcements here this morning, but it is something that I'm thinking about, and I'll make a decision in the coming months.
Let's go back to
what else do we know about which way Cheney might be leaning?
Nicole, good to be with you from Jackson, Wyoming. It's clear, based on my conversations with Congresswoman Cheney's allies, that she is seriously considering a 2024 presidential bid. It was hard not to hear that message and that fact when we were outside last night in Jackson, Wyoming, as she delivered her concession speech, which was really also a speech of defiance about this moment in the Republican Party, defiance of Trumpism and its grip on the GOP. She would be a potentially formidable candidate should she run for the Republican nomination, in the sense that she has a national fundraising base, a high profile from the January 6th committee, and support from traditional Republicans who know her and the legacy of her father, former Vice President Dick Cheney. But that all being said, even though she would have the money and the stature to run at a national level, this is still, as Wyoming showed last night, and here in other red states, Trump's party, and the path to the nomination would certainly likely be an uphill one.
She has also started a PAC in the wake of her loss. How could those funds be used?
She raised about $13 million, more than that, for this congressional bid. So now defeated, she's able to turn her federal money into a federal political action committee, a PAC, where she can spend that money potentially on a presidential campaign. She's also looking to start an advocacy group. Some of these nonprofit groups politicians also start on the side to push for issues they care about. She outlined in her speech on Tuesday night how she's focusing on the threat to American democracy from her point of view, from the former president, Donald Trump. She is someone, though, who is going to have to figure out, if she is going to run for the Republican nomination, how does that actually play out? Is she able to win states? I mean, somewhere like New Hampshire has traditionally been a place where someone like Senator John McCain, more moderate wing of the Republican Party, has gained traction in presidential contests. What's intriguing to me as a reporter is that some of my sources inside the consultant world in the Republican Party who don't love Trump are saying she could run potentially as an independent. Now, she said last night she wants to be a Republican. She said she is a Republican. But as an independent, she would have a lot more freedom to build a coalition that was inclusive of Democrats, Republicans, and independents.
And turning to Alaska, Senator Lisa Murkowski and former Governor Sarah Palin are moving on to the general election in their respective races. What do you think the success of these two ideologically different candidates says about the direction of their party?
Palin is someone who in 2008 captured the hearts of many in the Republican base. They saw her as someone who spoke to their values. And she began this politics of populism and grievance inside the Republican Party in the wake of the bank bailouts in 2008, then the rise of the Tea Party movement in 2009 and 2010. So Palin, in a sense, was a precursor to Trump and the way he seized on issues like immigration and trade to rise to the Republican nomination in 2016. So it's unusual for a former vice presidential candidate to not run for office since 2008 and then suddenly win a House seat primary in 2022, 14 years later. But it's not that unusual when you look at it through the scope of the Republican Party's transformation since the early years of President Obama's time in the White House. When you look at Senator Lisa Murkowski, she's faced foils before from the right. She's defeated them. So we're going to have to keep a close eye on Alaska, though we still don't know the real counts. Palin's projected to win. Murkowski not projected to win, projected to make the general election because Alaska has a ranked choice voting system, which would be another whole show to get into with you about the details of ranked choice in Alaska. But we'll give our viewers a break and not do that today.
Yeah, it is quite a lot to get through. But one last question for you, because I know you've also been covering the former president's legal challenges, which seem to be mounting between the January 6th investigation, the DOJ probe, the New York Attorney General investigation. But many of his endorsed candidates are also winning in these primaries. How is the former president juggling this split screen dynamic, if you will, and could it affect his own calculus about when and whether he announces for 2024?
The question for the former president and many of his allies now, Nicole, is Trump winning? Yes, he is, in the sense that his endorsed candidates are winning many primaries, but Trumpism is also winning in a sense. The policies and agenda he outlined are now pervasive inside the Republican Party. So just because a Trump-backed candidate is winning doesn't necessarily mean that Trump himself is automatically in position to win the Republican nomination in 2024. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has echoed Trump in many ways. He's campaigning for Doug Mastriano, an election denier running for governor in Pennsylvania, and others like Kerry Lake in Arizona running for governor there. And you see in Trumpism across the party also even people who are a little bit different in their persona, like Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, trying to appeal to the Trump base with their own overtures. So Trump, as he looks toward a 2024 bid, has to figure out, based on conversations with his aides and friends, whether he gets in now, September, October, November, to try to, in a sense, freeze the field from others who are rivals, who have his views being competition for him come 2024.
Robert Costa, thanks so much for your insight and safe travels back.
Thank you.